Welcome to the District Court Show. This is a production of the 10th Judicial District. I'm Judge Steve Halsey from Wright County. Beth Strand, my colleague as a judge there, is not able to be with us today. She is in the middle of a jury trial. I'm going to welcome our guest, who is Mark Gordon, who is the president and dean of the recently merged, I guess I'll call it, Mitchell-Hamline School of Law. So welcome, Mark.
Well, thank you very much, Judge. It's a pleasure to be here.
I'm happy that you're here. I was mentioning to Mark off camera, this is about our 90th episode in 12 years. We've never talked about legal education other than outreach to the general public, and it's very timely because of the, I guess the action, or however you want to call it, the acquiescence of the ABA recently with the merger. So maybe you could just explain to our viewers the process, and for those of you who are not familiar, for many years there have been 4 law schools in the state of Minnesota, University of Minnesota Law School, William Mitchell College of Law, Hamline Law School, and also St. Thomas Law School. And with the recession in 2007, 2008, as we'll talk about, enrollments have dropped precipitously. Perhaps that's too strong a word, but Mitchell and Hamline, Dean Gordon was just telling me, is the first pair of law schools in the country to merge as separate law schools. So why don't you tell our viewers about that process and how that started and was finally accomplished?
Well, thanks for having me, and I really appreciate it. I guess you waited 90 sessions because you were just waiting for this combination to happen.
We were waiting for it to happen.
and we appreciate that. This has been a really, really exciting time period for us at both institutions. So as you said, William Mitchell College of Law, actually founded in 1900, just combined with Hamline University School of Law. There were negotiations going on, frankly, from what I understand, they've been going on for over a decade, stop and go, but really got serious this past fall. And so there was actually a combination agreement was signed between the two of indicating their intent and desire to combine in February. And so that then triggered an entire process with the American Bar Association, which accredits law schools. As you mentioned, as far as we know and as far as anybody at the ABA that I've spoken to has been able to identify, this seems to be the first ever time that you have 2 separately, independently accredited law schools, both accredited by the ABA, combining together. And so since February, we've been going through what is called the ABA acquiescence process, in which they frankly do extensive fact-finding. They had a site team that came to visit both law schools in April, and that team did an extensive report. Then each school had an opportunity to respond to that report. There was then a formal hearing in front of the ABA Accreditation Committee in September. The ABA Accreditation Committee recommended acquiescence, and they then did an extensive, actually, letter explaining with findings of fact, et cetera. And that then led to the hearing in front of the ABA Council, which just occurred on December 4th. And so shortly thereafter, we heard that we had been granted acquiescence, and then we had the formal ceremony, which was the legal creation of Mitchell-Hamline School of Law. And we're pretty exhausted from all this, but we are really, really excited.
And my understanding is that the students that have not yet graduated can choose to have, what, one of 3 diplomas? Mitchell-Hamline or Mitchell-Hamline.
Right. Well, you can imagine the devil is in the details on so many of these things. And you're right, we are giving people a choice. And actually, my guess is we'll probably give alumni the choice as well. I have actually heard from some alumni of both Mitchell and of Hamline saying, hey, should I trade in my degree for a Mitchell-Hamline degree?
Oh, funny. I did do a little bit of checking, and well, first of all, just some basic statistics that people might be interested in. There are roughly 27,000 licensed attorneys in the state of Minnesota, and I saw on your website that there are 19,000 alumni from Mitchell, and is it just Mitchell?
Well, no, Mitchell-Hamline combined.
Combined, okay.
Actually, one of the things that we are particularly excited about is when you look at this new, combined school, we will be, well, actually, we are now the largest law school, not just in the state, but in the region.
Oh, wow.
We have about 1,000 students
Okay.
at the moment. We have, as you said, over 19,000 alumni. We have actually more scheduling options for a student to go to law school than any other law school in the country, because you can come for the full-time day program, you can come part-time evening, part-time weekend, or the online hybrid program. We have a nationally ranked health law institute, nationally ranked dispute resolution institute, nationally ranked clinical education program, nationally ranked part-time programs. So actually, we're really ready to roll.
You're ready to roll. I was telling Mark earlier that we have 6 judges in Wright County, 4 women and 2 men, and 5 of the 6 of us went to either Mitchell or Hamline, so we're very well represented as part of the alumni group. Let's talk a little bit about what brought on this 10-year period of talking about merger. I did have my law clerk do some research, and as far as a couple of the other law schools in the Twin Cities, the U of M enrollment dropped 20% from 2005 to 2015. St. Thomas went down 7%. They went down from about 400 down to about 390 as far as enrollment. And you had mentioned that you've got some statistics as far as nationwide, as far as enrollment in law schools.
Yeah, I mean, actually, the last 10 years have been pretty distinctive for law schools when you look at the history of the last 50 or so years. In about the last 8 or 10 years, if you look at applicants to law schools nationally, it's gone from about 100,000 per year applying to law school to now closer to 50,000. And that has led to pretty dramatic changes in the competitive environment for law schools. I don't think you can say that, it's because of that you have the combination. There are lots of good reasons for the combination. And actually, there were conversations going on even before that started happening in terms of enrollment. But I think it is a broader reality in terms of the marketplace with which we are dealing.
Are there still any classes over at Hamline University?
The plan is that the center of gravity of the Mitchell Hamline School of Law, will be on Summit Avenue, what had been the William Mitchell campus.
Okay.
My hope is that there will be occasional classes at Hamline. As I have said, anytime anybody offers me free space, I'd be dumb if I didn't take advantage of it.
Okay. When I started in 1974, boy, things were really different then. It was in this small building over across from St. Thomas on Summit Avenue.
Right.
And just as an example of how times have changed, I was in the evening program, and we would frequently see Governor Wendy Anderson jogging down Summit Avenue with no security. Right. That was the time when he was on the cover of Time magazine in a flannel shirt holding up a Northern Pike, and this is Minnesota, the place everybody wants to live. But I think it was a year or two after that, William Mitchell moved over to what had been a girls', I believe, Catholic high school.
That's right.
And certainly substantial improvements have made since then. The Berger Library went in.
Which is phenomenal.
It's really a phenomenal facility. How has the traditional, maybe there isn't a traditional, how have the demographics of the students that are attending law school, at least here in the Twin Cities, changed over, let's say, the last 10, 15 years?
Well, look, I think you're seeing several different trends. I mean, one, of course, Mitchell and Hamline have always believed very much in terms of providing access to non-traditional students. And so we actually haven't seen such a large difference in that sense because each, Hamline's had the weekend program, Mitchell has had the evening program, and each really catered to non-traditional students. I think what you're seeing around the country, though, is more and more of the quote-unquote non-traditional students looking to go to law school, and we're seeing that in particular, and I don't know if you want to talk about it now or maybe later in the program in the hybrid program.
Okay. And I guess I'd been aware of, reading articles that had come through Bench and Bar, the publication of the Minnesota State Bar Association, that a lot of folks have been going to law school evenings, weekends, basically to advance themselves within the job or career that they're in. They work in medical devices, or they work for an insurance company, or whatever it might be, and they're not going to be going out working for a law firm. Is that pretty accurate?
Yeah, I mean, actually, if you look at the national numbers, people who graduate from law school, about 51%, the most recent numbers that I saw, go into private practice. I think it's then another 18% or so who go into business, probably another 12 or 13% going into government. And so I think this notion that, everybody is just preparing for one particular, going into some large law firm, really is no longer true. One of the directions actually that we want to move as Mitchell Hamline is to push that even further. Because many of the people going into business or government may be going into legal or counsel positions in those entities. We think there is a real market and frankly a real need for people who are just interested in terms of being entrepreneurs, interested in going into business more from the business perspective, interested in becoming government leaders, et cetera. We think there's a real benefit to them from going to law school as well. So I like to say to prospective students, there are two reasons to go to law school. Either because you want to be a lawyer or because you don't want to be a lawyer. And if you fit into one of those, I think you should come to Mitchell Hamline School of Law.
How has this affected the faculty? And I'd be interested in knowing, too, how the faculty kind of demographics have changed over the years, because when I was in law school, almost 40 years ago, many of the instructors that I had were in private practice. They were prosecutors, they were in private law firms, they were public defenders. My criminal law instructor was the chief public defender for the state of Minnesota, C. Paul Jones, for a time. How has that changed over the years?
Well, there are still many faculty members, who called adjunct faculty, who have jobs during the day and then are teaching, at night or on weekends, as the case may be. What you do have, though, is that the ABA, in terms of its standards and in terms of its regulations, basically limits the ability of law schools to rely predominantly or totally on adjuncts. Excuse me, on adjuncts.
Okay.
And so my guess is that there'd actually be more innovation in law schools in that regard, if not for some of those standards.
Okay. We're going to take a brief 2-minute break for a public service announcement, and we will be right back.
Up, college is hard. Down, those books are heavy.
My sport is football, but my passion is education.
Right up here.
So every year I take promising high schoolers on a college tour
Lights there, darts there.
to show them that higher education means a brighter future. My name is NNAMDI ASOMUGHA. I don't just wear the shirt, I live it.
You can be a reader, tutor, or mentor too. Take the pledge at liveunited.org/volunteer.
Do you wear this?
Wake the sun, tell him that I've begun to dream of things to come, and tell the trees not to look for me. I'm going to find some peace of mind. Wake the sun, wake the sun, wake the sun, wake the sun.
Really? Buzz, what's up, man? You left some leaves burning out here.
Yeah, I just came in just for a second.
Come on, man. If it's too hot to touch, it's too hot to leave. You could torch the whole neighborhood.
It's a good point there, Smo. key.
9 out of 10 wildfires are caused by humans.
Only you can prevent wildfires.
Today, kids, I'm going to teach you how to stay safe during flu season. If you are feeling sick, stay home. Cover your mouth if you cough or sneeze. Wash your hands consistently throughout the day. And remember to get vaccinated. Got that?
Yes, Ms. Lee.
It may seem repetitive and, well, elementary, but this flu season, remember basic prevention. Protect yourself and others.
Welcome back to the District Court Show. I'm Judge Steve Halsey from Wright County, and my guest is Dean Mark Gordon, the president and the dean at the newly formed Mitchell Hamline Law School. You mentioned briefly about the hybrid program, and I'd like to go into that in some detail so folks are familiar with an alternative for going, driving down to Mitchell Hamline and sitting through lectures.
Yeah, this is an incredible program. We are the only law school in the country which received a variance from the American Bar Association to enable us to offer a program so that students can get an ABA accredited JD in which 50% of the class hours are online. So what that means is that students come for the first week of the semester, intensive in-class experiences, training, simulations, et cetera, and essentially for the last week, one of the last weeks, and all of the time in between is online. So it makes it possible for somebody, frankly, from any place around the country in order to participate in this program. And that's exactly what we have found is happening. Actually, 90% of the students are from outside of Minnesota. There are 4 from Alaska. There are 8 from Utah.
Oh, my.
And what we're also finding is, of course, it's a very different kind of student. The median age is 38. I think we have 2 cohorts going so far. That is, the first group came in January, and then the second group came in August. Between those two, 42 of the students already have advanced degrees. These are doctors, there's an acupuncturist, teachers, airline pilot, people in the military, retirees, venture capitalists, business people in different ways, somebody in the CIA. It's just an incredible array of experiences. And people have been speaking for a long time about one of the challenges in terms of in rural areas, there not being enough access to legal services and not being enough lawyers. And when you think about it, it makes sense because we require somebody to leave their community in order to go to law school. And so what this program is doing is saying, no, you can stay in your community and continue to have your job and continue to be part of the community while you're also getting your legal training. And frankly, it's going gangbusters. We are capped by the American Bar Association. We're only allowed to have 96 students per cohort, per year in this program. If not for that cap, we could have had 150 this year. And those are students of the same quality level as those whom we admitted. There was a student actually was on the wait list from Montana. He drove in on the second day of that first week when they were all in town in the hopes that somebody had not shown up so that he could have a spot. And turned out that everybody had shown up, and so hopefully he'll be joining us next year. But I think when people hear about doing legal education online, sometimes they just assume, oh, you take a camera, you put it in the back of a classroom. That's not at all what's happening here. This is actually a totally redesigned way of teaching the law. Students are actually each week in each class handing in work. They are getting feedback each week. There are a series of learning outcomes expected each week. They are interacting in many, many different ways online with each other, with the faculty, and it's just there's a great dynamism among and cohesion, frankly, among the students in the program. We have figured out how to make sure that they can compete for law review, how they can be part of law review. They're part of on-campus clubs and associations and things like that. And so I think it really is rethinking legal education for the future.
How has the method of teaching changed? Because we're both familiar with what the Socratic method is.
Yes.
And I just remember, my first few weeks of law school thinking, what in the heck is this? I mean, this is completely different from any kind of education you've either had in high school or college, and all of a sudden you're reading these decisions, International Shoe and State versus Jones or whatever it is. Explain what that is and how different that is from regular college teaching.
Right. Well, certainly the Socratic method, right, which has been the traditional mode of legal education, is first based on reading, as you said, appellate cases, essentially. But I think most students are used to, in college, they're used to a lecture in which they sit there and the faculty member, briefs them essentially on information. I think somebody, once said that the lecture is the best way to transfer material from the notes of the professor to the notebook of the students without going through the mind of either. And what the Socratic method does is say, no, what we're trying to do, especially in the first year, is teach students how to think like a lawyer. And so that means you read the case, but then you engage in this dialogue with the professor in which the professor is constantly asking the students questions and changing the fact patterns and saying, would this matter? What if it were different in this respect? What if it were different in that respect? It can be a real challenge, but it can also be a lot of fun. And I think what you find is that it does really train the mind in a quite distinctive way. Now, when people hear it, I think they think in terms of paper chase and that kind of approach. And certainly, law schools have moved away from that. And I can certainly let students know that at Mitchell Hamline, it's a much friendlier, nicer, supportive kind of place to be.
John Houseman isn't barking at the students and intimidating them and embarrassing them in front of their peers.
That's right. The goal is for every student to succeed.
Yeah.
But now, so you have that traditional method of the Socratic method. Of course, legal education has moved from that somewhat anyway, because you have legal writing classes, which didn't used to exist in the same way, have clinical education, which didn't exist in the same way. But of course, the hybrid then made us rethink that even more. Because on the one hand, it's a little different. You don't have the professor in front of the classroom, calling on you that way. But on the other hand, when you're online, you can't be sitting in the back of the classroom trying to hide behind your books.
That's a good point. That's where I like to hide, in the back of the room. And even though I'm tall, nobody could, I hoped I wasn't going to be called on. What is the holding in this case, Mr. Halsey? Oh, I don't know.
Well, and actually what we're finding with the hybrid is that because students are handing in work product every week in every class, they are getting much more and sooner feedback in terms of how they are doing. And it also means that if a student is starting to struggle, we can identify that much earlier in the semester. And so my prediction actually is that there will be many things that we will learn from the hybrid that we will then apply to what we now call the bricks and mortar program, which is the non-hybrid program.
How about testing? I mean, the tests that we had were a fact situation, and then you had to identify the holding, and it was blue book, it was all essay. How has that changed?
Oh, all testing is pretty much online now anyway.
Yeah.
Students actually, as we are taping, are going through final exams. They're doing that all through computers, right? And you and I, when we were in law school, it would be a set time. Okay, 9 a.m. on Tuesday, you have your Civ Pro final. No, now students can choose when they're taking different finals. That has really changed a lot, whether you're in the bricks and mortar program or you're in the online program.
And I know that I've always felt fortunate to be able to do the clinics at William Mitchell, as did all the people I knew. I think that was the thing that drew a lot of people to Mitchell back 40 years ago. And Mitchell always had a very good reputation for that. Explain how the clinics work, and maybe they've changed since then.
Well, actually, the clinics are really a central part of Mitchell Hamline. I think the latest count, I think we're going to have 17 different clinics now as a combined law school. What clinics do is enable students to take what they're learning in class and actually apply it by working with a real client. And so it might be in the context of a landlord-tenant kind of situation. It might be in the context of, helping somebody who's working on a criminal appeal. It might be immigration law. It can be lots of different things. We are very proud of the extent to which clinical experiences play such a role in the legal education at Mitchell Hamline. Actually, I think you should stay tuned, because you'll see that one of the things that both Mitchell and Hamline have had in common is a real focus on practical hands-on training. And so I think you'll be seeing over the next few months, actually, our developing curricular ideas that are not just clinics, but are other ways to give students that kind of practical hands-on training.
And a question about the hybrid that I didn't ask you, and that is this: are the students able to take the classes? Maybe one person is just so busy they can only take one class this semester, as opposed to taking 3 or 4 as we did way back when.
The way it is currently structured, the students are going through as a cohort, and so they are all taking the same classes.
Okay.
Now, one would hope over time, and should the ABA, in its wisdom, lift the cap in terms of enrollment and things like that, I'd love to have a situation in which basically the distinction between the bricks and mortar program and the hybrid program, in which those distinctions disappear, in which a student can be taking in-class classes when they want, but maybe something comes up in their lives and they want to do more online or the hybrid kind of variety for a semester, and we'd love to be able to give them that kind of flexibility. But that's hopefully for another show.
And what does law school cost these days? I have no idea.
Well, you have to make a real distinction between the sticker price and the actual price.
Okay.
Right. I mean, if you're looking at sticker price, I mean, the typical is, about $40,000. Okay. $35,000 to $40,000 tends to be quite typical.
That's per year?
Per year. But essentially what has happened is that schools have become more and more generous in terms of the scholarship aid that they give. And so actually I thought there was a study and some data that showed that over the last 5 years, that actually taking that into account, that law school tuitions had either been stable or actually gone down, effectively after you counted those scholarships.
Okay.
So it's actually a wide range. Of course, the good news is the value is incredible.
Great. Well, I want to thank you, Mark, for being on our program.
My pleasure.
Maybe after a couple of years, we'll have you back as a guest again, see how things have gone with the merger. And again, thank you for being on the program.
Well, thanks so much for having me.
I want to thank our viewers for watching this program. If you have questions about this program or topics you'd like us to cover, my email address is going to be rolling with the credits. So thank you for watching the District Court Show, and we'll see you again next time.